The HPICAL-15000 Calibration Station is a self-contained hydrostatic pressure testing device designed to inspect and calibrate hydraulic systems and gauges up to 15,000 psi. It uses an air-driven pump to create and finally adjust high-pressure hydraulic output and is built around a state-of-the-art digital logging gauge capable of storing upwards of 20,000 strings of pressure data and outputting inspection and calibration reports as required. The HPI calibration station is easy to set up and easy to use. It comes with its own cart with plenty of storage built in and a laptop shelf right in front of it. The only requirements are a 90 psi air source and a water source, as well as a 110 volt outlet.
Warning: always wear proper safety equipment when using high pressure equipment. Do not exceed 125 psi air pressure. Never exceed the maximum pressure rating of the gauge being tested. Be sure pressures on air and water systems are relieved before disconnecting any hoses or fittings. Pressurization of any materials is very dangerous. Please follow all OSHA procedures for stored energy and pressurization precautions pertaining to the fluids used. Read and understand all instructions before performing a test calibration. Here is a basic overview of the controls on the Witter calibration station. The two valves on the left side control the flow of the air and water into the unit. These are 90-degree twist valves and are marked on and off. The air regulator controls the air pressure going to the pump motor and is used as the main control system to build pressure. Turn the regulator knob clockwise to build air pressure and counterclockwise to relieve air pressure from the pump. The gauge below the regulator knob reads applied air pressure and is for reference only. The large blue digital gauge is the main system pressure gauge and also controls logging functions and parameters. This gauge is powered through an AC power converter, which is plugged into the power strip on the cart. The pressure adjust knob is used for fine adjustment of the system pressure. This is the control used for fine pressure adjustments during inspection and calibration processes. The bleed valve is used to bleed trapped air from the system as well as relieve system pressure as required. When closing the bleed valve, be sure to tighten very firmly to seal the system, but be careful not to over-torque the valve as damage may occur. There are two system pressure outputs that can be used. The main test port is on the side of the calibration station and is intended for the hydrostatic test systems such as the HPIC and HPIM models. The auxiliary test port is on top of the calibration station and is used for individual gauge testing and calibration. On the back of the unit are the air and water inputs. The air input is a 3/8 inch MPT fitting, while the water input is a 1/2 inch MPT fitting. Before making any connections, be sure both the air and water valves are turned to the off position and the pressure regulator is backed off all the way. The bleed valve should also be opened slightly to make sure there's absolutely no air trapped inside of the unit. To connect to the main test port, remove the cap from the main test port and attach the test hose securely. Be sure to store the cap somewhere safe. Be sure the plug for the auxiliary test port is installed and tightened fully as well. Attach the other ends of the test hose to the output fitting on the system to be tested using an appropriate adapter. The test hose ends are a standard M-type connection. Use Teflon tape as required for MPT threads and tighten connections securely. Be sure that the input fitting on the system being tested is plugged tightly and any bleed valves are closed. To connect using the auxiliary test port, first be sure that the main test port cap is installed and tightened securely. Remove the plug from the auxiliary test port and store safely. Attach the appropriate test adapter to the auxiliary test port and tighten this very securely. Finally, attach the gauge to be tested to the adapter. Use Teflon tape as required on MPT fittings. It is always important to bleed as much trapped air from the system before performing an inspection or calibration of a system or gauge. Once the system or gauge is hooked up to the calibration station, bleed the system as follows. When testing a gauge directly through the auxiliary test port, first open the bleed valve between a 1/4 and 1/2 inch turn. This releases all pressure on the system. Data logging can also be started at this time, and a 0 pressure reading is taken. Turn the water valve to the on position. Water should run through the system and exit at the drain tube. Let the water run for a few seconds and then close the bleed valve. Then crack open the bleed valve again slightly to be sure all trapped air has been removed and close the bleed valve tightly. When testing a complete system, such as the HPIC hydrostatic pressure tester, open both the bleed valve on the calibration station and the bleed valve on the unit being tested approximately 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch turn. If the unit being tested has an isolation valve, this should be closed at this time. At this point, both gauges can be zeroed. Data logging can also be started at this time as well, and a 0 pressure reading will be taken. Now turn the water valve to the on position and let water flow through both units for a few seconds. Then close the bleed valve on the unit being tested, followed by the bleed valve on the calibration station. Crack open and reclose the bleed valve on the unit being tested, and then crack and reclose the bleed valve on the calibration station to make sure all trapped air is removed. Once everything is hooked up correctly and the system has been bled of any trapped air, the calibration station can be used to accurately build pressure in the complete system. Be sure the air pressure regulator is backed off all the way, fully counterclockwise. The water valve should be on. The pressure adjust knob should be backed off completely as well. Turn the air valve to the on position. Slowly turn the air pressure regulator knob clockwise to increase system pressure. Increase system pressure slowly until you have reached a point approximately 300 to 500 psi below the desired air pressure. Now back off the air pressure regulator knob completely, which is fully counterclockwise. This may cause the system pressure to back off slightly as the check valves seat themselves. Now use the pressure adjust knob to bring the system pressure to the desired level. Turn clockwise to build pressure. Turn counterclockwise to relieve pressure. If you've gone too far and need to lower overall system pressure, crack the bleed valve slightly to relieve pressure. Then use the air pressure regulator once again to build system pressure to a level below what you're looking for. Back off the regulator and again, use the pressure adjust knob to dial in the desired system pressure. Using this procedure, you can use the calibration station to reach whatever pressure levels are desired, according to the specific instructions of the gauge or systems that are being tested. On your Aditel digital logger gauge, there's a couple buttons you should get to know. First is the peak button located on top. Next is the power button. Following is the analog dial button. Next, the backlight button, the units button, and the 0 button. Here's how to set your date and time. First, press and hold the peak button to enter the main menu. Second, press the 0 button to enter the logging menu. Third, press the 0 button again to enter the date and time settings. Fourth, press the 0 button once again to begin setting the year. Fifth, use the units, peak, and backlight buttons to change the year, month, day, and time. When all are set correctly, you can press the 0 button to accept these changes. Following that, you can use the power button to escape back to the main screen. Please note that if the gauge loses power, or it's unplugged from the AC power, the date and time will reset back to the factory set date and time. The following steps are for prepping for data logging. First, press and hold the peak button. Second, press the 0 button to enter the logging menu, option 1. Use the backlight button to scroll down to the gap setting, option 5. This will need to be set every time a new session started. Fourth, use the units button to move over until the right number is flashing. Use the peak and backlight buttons to move the interval up or down. Next, press the 0 button to accept your set interval. Use the backlight button to scroll down to the off setting, option 6. Press the 0 button to turn on logging. At this point, the percentage sign should be flashing to indicate logging's active. Use the power button to escape back to the main screen. To turn off logging, please repeat steps 1, 2, 7, and 8. First, you'll need to open up your Adatel LAN software. Following that, you'll need to click on the magnifying glass with the word SCAN written underneath it. You should see your gauge appear with the model number, serial number, and even the device name in the panel below. A new window should appear once you click on that, with the options to fine-tune how you like your gauge readings to be exported for you. Click Data Logging and a new window should appear. On this window, you're able to effectively change the logging state of your gauge, the unit's pressure, and temperature. Ensure that you change the temperature to Fahrenheit, and once this is done, click Upload. Your gauge's readings should appear momentarily. Once they do, head to the top of the window and click the green Export button. This will allow you to select a file or folder on your PC to export your gauge's log as an XLS format. Type in your desired name and destination and save it to your computer. Once this is complete, your gauge's readings should open automatically in an Excel sheet. Format with the proper readings and an Adatel header at the top of the sheet. Your gauge's info will also be listed at the top as well for most accurate reporting possible. Once you properly loaded your Excel sheet with the logging data, you can go and select the readings taken. Say, if you were actually testing a gauge, you would take 3 necessary readings, the min, max, and mid-range. You can copy those specific readings into your certificate of calibration and depict that the unit you've tested has properly been calibrated and is ready to go. By doing so, this will automatically generate a line graph in the certificate based off of your readings. Once that's complete, ensure that you fill in the appropriate information above for your gauge, your certifier's name and the type of gauge being calibrated, and the serial number of the gauge being calibrated. Insert your signature at the bottom, and you're good to export or print the certificate for quality control. It's imperative that you export and print your certificate once it's complete to ensure that absolutely no data is lost. Just go to File and ensure that you choose Fit to One Page and print your certificate. Once you've printed your certificate, you can go back to your ITAL LAN program and select the Delete button, which is depicted on the window that's still open with your gauge's readings. You will then be prompted with a password to ensure that you're looking to delete your previous gauge's log. This is a way of saving you from erroneous deletions. The password is always 211. Once you exit out the previous windows, you're now ready to once again calibrate another unit. We thank you for using the HPICAL-15000.